Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is where you're watching. This is Maren Costa from the Unapologetically Maren, the Cornbread Chronicles podcast. We have a great guest today. This is actually the first guest for season two. So thank you guys so much for such a successful season one. We still have to drop about four more episodes. The season finale for season one is a three-part special that you're really going to enjoy. But as you listen to this, we are now in season two, first episode with Kristin Watson. She was involved in the Fundamentalist Baptist Church cult world, and we would love to hear what she has to say. Hello, Kristin. Thank you for coming on. How are you?
Hi there. I am doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Your story was so interesting. I was like, I got to get her right away. Just kind of found you on TikTok and I was like looking at your profile. And I was like, yeah, this is interesting. This is something I want people to hear. So go on.
Yes,
The floor is yours, sister. So start where you want
I
to
love
start and let's
it.
go.
Thank you. And I love that we found each other on TikTok. I feel like this is my
Yes.
time where people are starting to find me and hear my voice, and it's very exciting. So I love that this is our story.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So, really, we have to backtrack, right? We're looking at how it all began for me, and it all really does begin with religion, and it really starts with my dad. My dad was one of those type of men that he really wanted to be in control of his family. And I mean that to the nth degree. Like he wanted to be the one to make the decisions, to do everything that he thought that he wanted for his family without anybody having any other say, including my mother. So, unfortunately, what that led us to in religion was a variety of churches that all really promoted that meant that man is the head of the household, that they are in control. And what's worse with that is that they took it to the extremes. There was corporal punishment not only for children, but kind of for their wives as well. And that's how extreme some of these churches got. And this is really before I even get into fundamentalism. I laugh because as a child, obviously, I don't have a ton of memory of those early churches, but I do
Right.
remember there was one church that they always had donuts at the church. So I knew it as the donut
The
church. So
donut
I always
church.
yes, I always reference that as the donut church, but unfortunately, that's the fun side of it. The bad side of it is that it promoted abuse for women, abuse of power for men. They not only had all the control, but they abused that power to kind of make it like their wife was another child. So it wasn't
Yeah.
really another parent in the household. She was a child underneath the husband. So that's
Right.
kind of how my life started. I was in private school or a private Christian school from kindergarten to third grade, or I guess it was almost all the way through third grade. But my father deemed it to be too worldly. He wanted to, again, you'll notice the control piece. He wanted to control the narrative. So he wanted to control what his children were learning. So he thought it was too worldly. So we got pulled from Christian school. I was then homeschooled from fourth grade all the way through high school. After that, I never went back to any formal school. And when it comes to homeschooling, unfortunately, now I'm kind of jaded when it comes to homeschooling. Not that I'm thinking all homeschooling is wrong, but unfortunately for my family specifically, they kind of did a great job of it for the first couple of years, but then it got really loose. So I really didn't get a lot of formal education growing up. It mainly had to do with the church and Bible and things like that. So unfortunately for me, when you get now to the end of my story, it made it really challenging being an adult, having to go out into a world that I just literally was not prepared for. So
Right.
you have me, right? So you have me pulled out. We then get to the point right before I really get into fundamentalism, and that's really where this kind of story begins. I had a brother who was diagnosed at a very young age with a rare blood disease, and he actually passed away when he was 2 years old. So I was about 10 at this point, and my family ended up discovering this church that ends up being my first fundamentalist Baptist church. And for your listeners, because a lot of people hear the word, independent fundamentalist Baptist, latch onto that Baptist, and they're like, well, But Baptist isn't a cult, so please explain to me
Right.
what this means. So I like to go into what that means so the listeners understand. So first you have to look at the word independent. And basically what that means is it's independent of any other body. It does not associate with another church. The pastor is the head of the church and they don't answer to any other body. Right. Then you get into the fundamentalist piece, and that's really where your extremism comes. So you'll hear the word fundamentalism in a lot of other religions. And you always have to think when you hear fundamentalist, whatever, it's the most extreme version of that religion. So it was fundamentalist Baptist. So it is Baptist, but they're taking it to the most extreme version of that, where they only believe the King James Version of the Bible. They believe that version verbatim. So it's not just these are some maybe rules to live by. It's no, these are black and white how we are going to live. So they take that to the extreme version. So when you look at that, everything's extreme, right? Purity culture is now extreme.
Right.
The head of the household with men is now extreme. So everything is to that extreme version. So when my brother was in the hospital and then ultimately he passed away, I like to say that these bodies of churches tend to prey on people at their most vulnerable points. So
Right.
they take people that are maybe having drug addiction, having alcohol addiction, losing a child. They're taking you when you're at the bottom and saying, "Oh, I'm giving you away. And
Yeah.
now we're providing this for you." So now you're sucked into it because they're doing all of these things for
That's
you.
freedom.
And right? So now you feel almost like you're hooked into the system.
Yeah, I can
Exactly.
imagine because you're at a vulnerable, like you said, a vulnerable time where, like, especially like your parent, I mean, they needed something to grasp onto, to hold on to. And unfortunately, they just found a very extreme version of what they could have found somewhere else. And,
Exactly. And go ahead.
oh no, you go.
So
Oh,
ultimately, the way we found this church, it was interesting. So I actually was a figure skater and I figure skated professionally. I started at the age of 3 because I was homeschooled. I could literally figure skate 5, 6 days a week. So I spent hours on the ice. My goal, my dream was the Olympics. I was able to skate with Tara Lipinski at one point. So it was
cool.
literally I lived and breathed figure skating. And the reason why we found this church is the pastor wasn't making enough money doing, being a pastor. So he had to have some side jobs. So one
Hmm.
of his side jobs was at this particular skating rink. And that's how he met my family. Now, what's interesting when you look at Fundamentalist Baptist, most of these places aren't going to let you figure skate because you think you are in a costume that wouldn't be approved, you're listening to music that you wouldn't be approved. However, this pastor, because he got to know my family and he saw me skate, he literally told my family that she has such talent and she's so beautiful on the ice. I can't take that away from her. So he actually wasn't the one who ultimately made me say that I had to give up figure skating. What ended up happening is I went to a youth camp, and a lot of people would think, oh, youth camp, summer camp, that must have been
Yeah,
so much
fun,
fun,
fun. Yeah.
right? Like fun in the sun, swimming. That was not my experience whatsoever. So imagine me between the ages of, I would say, 11 and 12 or 10 to 12. You go to these camps, and what it is hours and hours and hours of preaching, and not just preaching like, oh, we need to get closer to God, we need to cultivate that relationship. What they did is they really broke you down. They told you that anything that was of you or that you wanted to do was of your flesh, meaning it was selfish, it was not of God. So if you wanted something, that's not of God, that's of you, and that's evil. So they really talked about being in the world, but not of the world. And what that means is you're part of this world, but because you are a saved Christian, you got to be different. You can't be associated with people that are not part of the church. So they really try to break you down. And ultimately, what happened is there was a sermon that was preached, and it was really late at night. That was the other thing, is they kept us up super late at night as well. So again, you're talking preteens, teenagers, right?
Right.
So it was one of these sermons where they were preaching this that I got what's called convicted, right? I, all of a sudden was like, wow, I'm being told that I'm of the devil or doing things of the devil because I'm figure skating. That's for me. So that's not of God. That's for me. So it's selfish. So I need to give that up. And they had what's called altar calls. And
Uh-huh.
altar calls is where at the end of the sermon, they are basically encouraging people to go up to the altar to pray, to give things up. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but
Yeah.
when you are a teenager and it's late at night and you've been preached at for hours and there's all these emotions, I'm a very empathetic person anyway. So I'm
Hmm.
feeling all of these things. I'm thinking I'm horrible, I'm sinful. So I, in that moment, give up figure skating for God because I thought that that's what I needed to do. So I get back to church after youth camp and I go to tell my pastor that this is what happened. And what I wish had happened now, looking back in hindsight, right, as an adult looking back, I'm like, I wish when I got back and I said, hey, I gave this up for God. What he should have said is, God doesn't need to give you to give that up. He doesn't need
Right.
you to do that.
Right.
Instead, what happened is I was glorified. He started preaching sermons about me, saying, Kristin is this godly girl. She did this huge sacrifice for God. She's now this amazing person. So this puts me in this impossible situation of I can't go
Yeah.
back now. I've not only given it up for God, but now everybody's
Everybody
talking about it.
knows. Yeah. On a
Yes,
pedestal.
everybody's,
Hmm.
yes, but a pedestal that you don't need to be on.
That's
Like,
exactly.
I was 11, 12 years old. I didn't know how to handle that. And the unfortunate part was I never went back after that. I literally thought that this was it. Like I gave it up. And there was a couple times throughout my adult, hood that I, did it with my kids or whatever, but never went back to the way it was before. And obviously, we'll get into later how that turns around. But so this is where we're at, right? So I'm now in a fundamentalist Baptist church. I've been asked now to give up pants. I'm now living completely different because before then, even though these were really controlling churches, it wasn't to this level. So now
Right.
we've amped up everything, right? We're getting now close to the year 2000. This is where my story kind of gets a little bit crazier. Hard to believe, but it's getting crazier. So my dad was this huge conspiracy theorist. He thought the government was out to get Christians. He told us that as kids. He would literally tell us that they were going to round us up and put us in concentration camps at gunpoint.
Mm.
So he thought that the year 2000 was going to be this Y2K thing and that
Yeah.
everything was going to shut down and everything was going to be like apocalypse level.
All
So
right.
we
I remember all
moved.
those people.
Right? Exactly. So we moved from Illinois to the like suburbs of Chicago to the middle of nowhere in East Tennessee, literally off the grid. So we were on a generator, we canned food, we had this huge storage unit, chickens, you name it. So I go from suburbs of Chicago, right, around 12 years
Wow.
old, to the middle of nowhere off the grid. And what's bad about that too, though, when I look at the full picture, I at least had extended relatives in Illinois that were outside of that fundamentalist Baptist cult world. So I had some connections to people.
Right.
When we moved here, we were isolated. We had
Mm.
no one
Nothing.
except an abusive father, not much better mother. And then that turns into the story how we ultimately get into the really hardcore cult fundamentalist Baptist world. So now I'm a teenager. We've now discovered this church that, of course, my father loves because it's now taking everything to a more extreme version. So now I'm put into a place as this very vulnerable youth, 12, 13 years old, where my voice is ripped away. I don't have any autonomy. I have no rights over myself or what I do, what I think. It all is deemed by the pastor. And the pastor really is the one who controls everything.
Every-
And the
Everything
pastor's
and
son and I,
everyone.
literally,
Yeah.
whatever he deems. So basically, you think of the pastor, he's like the voice of God. So they have what's called the umbrella. And what the umbrella means, or the umbrella foundation, is that God is at the top. The pastor's underneath that. Then you have the father, and then you have the mother, and then you have the children. And what they would say is, as long as you stood and you were in your place, God would protect you with that umbrella of protection. But if you went outside of that, then that's your fault. Like if something bad happened to you, it was because you were outside of that umbrella of protection. So they really, really honed it into you that you needed to stay in your place, that you, if you were
Right.
a child, you were at the very bottom. And the unfortunate part is when you look at that, the only person that that pastor is answering to is God. And we're talking about something that can't talk to us, can't confirm that this is what he's saying to the pastor, right? So
Right.
ultimately, the pastor has zero obligation to anybody. He can say whatever he want. He can do whatever he wants because ultimately we can't confirm or deny that that is the
Right.
case. And the
Right.
way this church worked is if you went against the pastor, you were going against God. So ultimately, you'd be kicked out. And that's what's called excommunication, where the pastor has decided you're coming against the man of God. You need to go. And
Right.
as a teenager, there were families who were actually excommunicated when I was there. So one of my very best friends, I to this day don't know the reason why, because we lost communication. But one of my very best friends, they were excommunicated in their whole family. And I just had to stop talking to them because if you were caught talking to anybody that was excommunicated, you could be excommunicated as well. So it's
Yeah.
right. So it's similar to like shunning. You hear that with the Amish. It
Yeah.
is actually very similar to that. So I experienced that a lot. And I have a little bit of a different story too. So when I was almost graduating high school, so remember, I'm homeschooled. The church actually has a homeschooling group. So everybody in this church is homeschooled.
Homeschool.
So you were in a bubble. Like you are not allowed outside of that bubble. You were in this bubble with everybody else. So in the state of Tennessee where we were, you had to have end of the year testing. It was required by the state. So we even did that in the church. It was overseen by the church. So everything was done by the church. But my experience when I went to graduate high school, my father, because he had all these political beliefs and everything else, the pastor wasn't a huge fan of my dad in general. So my dad, actually got excommunicated while I was going to the church. Yes. So
Gosh.
he's living in our house with us. So he wasn't allowed to go to my high school graduation. The only way
Um,
he would have been able to is if he went up in front of the church and apologized, and then he would have been able to go.
and he didn't.
No. And at the end of the
No.
day, I'll be honest with you, my dad was a very abusive man. At the time as a child, I really tried hard to gain his love. I
Yeah.
really, right? Like I
As all
wanted that
children
relationship.
do. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted that relationship with him. I saw other daughters and their fathers, and I always wanted that. I wanted that feeling of protection. I wanted that love. Unfortunately, my father just wasn't a human that was capable of doing that because he just, again, was very abusive physically and emotionally. So I wasn't really missing it, but I was missing it because I didn't have a father at my high school
Right.
graduation. And it's wild that that's because of the religion, ultimately also because of him. But it is
Right.
crazy that it's like the church took away so many things and my own father took away so many things. So the graduation, you'll laugh because the graduating class was three. There was three of us.
Oh, wow. I thought
So
mine
it
was
was,
small. I graduated in 98 with 98 people.
oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
crazy. I kind of
I'll
love that. You'll
always
have to
remember
look.
like
Yes, you'll have to look up like the numerology for that to see if that means
uh
anything. I think that would be really
yeah,
cool.
sure might. That is neat. I have to do that.
Right? Yes. So my graduating class was my best friend, that is also named Kristin, just spelled differently. And then the pastor's son and I were actually a thing all the way through our teenage years. So he was the other graduating member. And there's some interesting facts about him. So you're not allowed to date in this religion. It's called
Yeah.
courting. So courting is when you're always chaperoned and it's when you know that you're ultimately probably going to marry this person. So it's with the intention of marriage.
Yeah.
So the pastor's son and I were never anything official. We were allowed to talk at church, and that was the max. And we could never even shake hands, let alone do
Yeah.
anything else. So it was very much like you have to always be around people. We were never alone. But here are some fun facts on what's very different. And this really goes to show you how women were treated, or how girls even were treated.
Mhm.
We took mission trips to Mexico every year during the summer, and we would go to help a church down there. And when we were down there, we would go to some of the markets, and Paul, this individual and I, we would go out together. And I was actually told by the pastor and by him that my job was to help protect his purity. And the way I would do that is, while we were walking down the street, if a woman walked by with an indecent outfit, or if there was a billboard that had, again, a woman that had a revealing something on, I was to tell him that this was coming so he could avert his eyes and look the other way. That was my responsibility.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is very
So,
crazy. What about you? So you're
right?
allowed to look at other guys though as they walk by?
Do you know why? It's because men are carnal, and so they can't help their impulses. So that's why the
Oh.
responsibility fell
Hmm.
on women. And that's the interesting thing about this cult, is that they give women and girls zero power. You have zero authority. However, you have all the responsibility to keep men pure, to keep boys pure. And then also, it is your job to keep yourself, making sure that you don't make a grown man stumble. So your outfits, the way you acted, the way you walked, everything could make a man stumble. As a teenage girl, that was your responsibility, not theirs, because again, they're carnal. So they took
Right.
no responsibility. We took on that responsibility, but also were given no power. So I talk about this a lot, that it really was an impossible world for girls and women to live in, because there was no
Yeah.
winning. You were always wrong. You were always in trouble, because ultimately that's the position that they put you in. And now, looking back as an adult, I see it for what it is, that women really are powerful. We are powerful. And they
Yes.
knew that. And so
Hmm.
they kept us small. They kept us powerless. They kept us voiceless, because as soon as you see that, they know they can't keep you anymore. Because as a woman, you're going to get out of there, because you just
Right.
have that within yourself. So, fast forward, I graduate high school. Ultimately, when I initially started in that church, you weren't allowed to go to college as a female, but that loosened in the fact that there were two independent fundamentalist Baptist colleges that we were allowed to attend. One
Okay.
of which was the Crown College, which is in Powell, Tennessee, which is very far east, almost Knoxville area. So my brother was a student. He was a year above me. I graduated, and that's where I went to school. And I was excited, because I
Yeah.
was literally kept in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't able to do anything. So this to me was like the big adventure. Now,
Oh
surprise,
yeah.
right? But surprise, surprise, this college was even more strict than what the way I grew
The
up.
church.
So yes. So I
Oh my
traded
gosh.
what was already really strict for an environment where the girls were mandated that you have to live on campus, and the houses that we lived in was right across from the church and like on the campus, so it was very visible. And remember, their job is to keep us pure, so they're going to keep tabs on us at all times. And one of the ways that they did that is, as a girl, you were not allowed to leave campus unless you had a total of 5 girls and you all had to go together. Not only that, but you had to check in and check out. So there was a book where you had to say where you were going, why you were going, and how long you were going to be gone for, and then check back in to say, yes, I'm back at this time. This is what I did. So they kept tabs on you at all times. There was also approved places where girls could work,
Yeah.
and a lot of the restrictions on that, they would actually talk to the employers. So the church and the school would talk to the employers to let them know they can't work Sundays, the girls have to wear X amount of outfits, like skirts and all of that. And I always wonder to myself now, what all did they say to them? Like,
Yeah.
how weird is it that a church is talking
It's
to your
it's your
employer?
employer. Yeah. As
right?
I was an HR director for 25 years, and
Oh, wow.
retired it last March. I can't imagine you coming and applying for a job with me, and your church has to contact me and tell me. I have had a husband try to do that once, and no, sir.
Wow.
Yes, and it was um she would come to find out she was a mail order bride. Yeah.
Wow.
But I was like, no, sir,
Wild.
you are not my employee. She
Yeah.
is. You cannot come here while she's working. I've no, and I don't know. You probably wouldn't have been able to work for me because I wouldn't have listened to a dang thing they had to say. Because
Right?
I'm worried about you, and not them, not your mama. I've had people come in for interviews with their mama, their husband. I'm like, no, ma'am.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine, but that's right. Like that's crazy in of itself, a
Yeah,
mother or a partner. But then you think
but
of
a
a
church.
college
Mm-mm.
slash church that screams control, that screams
Yeah,
cult because they don't trust you. They know that there are these influences that are going to pull you outside of it. So it's their job to keep you inside of that. So everything was just very extreme, and for women, obviously more. The boys or the guys could live off campus. They didn't have the restrictions with jobs. They didn't have the restrictions with where they could go or how many people. So there was a really stark difference between the females and the males living there. And then the other thing that I always like to bring up, because to this day I just am mind blown, they actually had a rule during the time I was there. So this isn't that long ago, right? That you couldn't interracially date unless, or court, I guess, unless
yeah.
you had the permission of both the woman and the man, and they had to tell the school that. So if you were of a different race, you had to have permission from both parents to court during the time that I was there.
Wow.
Right? And like, are we still segregated? Like, where is this?
Exactly.
It was wild, and a lot of those practices are still going on to this
Mhm.
day. On my TikTok account, I'll have people actually reach out to me that either were formerly students or have relatives that are in college there now. They're like, what do I do? How do I talk to them? And unfortunately, when you're in these worlds, there's no talking to you because you are so enveloped in that brainwashing mentality that until
Right.
you decide to get out, you're not going to hear what anybody else has to say. So unfortunately, a lot of that's still happening. So long story short, day 3 going into this college, we have an outing to Ripley's Aquarium. And during this time, again, there were a lot of guys trying to talk to me, whatever. But I was like, oh, I'm just having fun. I'm just excited to be doing anything besides being at home.
Anything. Right.
Right. So I'm at, reading some, thing at the aquarium, and I look up and I see a guy and he smiles at me and I give him a big smile back, and he starts walking over, and he'll tell you to this day that if I hadn't smiled at him, he's like, I would have never come over to you because I was so intimidated by you. But
No.
he's like, yeah, your smile allowed me the comfort to be able to do that. So that's my now husband that was in here
uh
earlier helping me with
I
all
knew
my
you were going to say
technology.
that.
Yeah, so we will be celebrating 21 years of marriage this year. And
Yay.
yeah, so we met, and literally from that point on, it's like, when you meet somebody and you feel like you've known them forever, he instantly became my best friend. Up until this point, I lived in a home where I truly didn't feel love. I didn't feel safe at any point. And so he was the first person to come into my life that I felt safe with and I felt seen, and I could talk to him about anything, and I felt like I could have those conversations that I'd never had with anybody else, and he really became quickly that really safe space, and I became that for him as well because he's a
Yeah.
pastor's son. So he grew up in the same world I did, except even more extreme because he's a pastor's kid. So obviously he has a really crazy story too, but we met day 3 and we literally became known as like the couple on campus. Everybody talked
Mhm.
about us. Everybody knew we were in love, but you're going to laugh. I made him work really hard for me. I was really a believer in everything that I was being taught. So I made sure that we had Bibles in between us when we were sitting. I just was very much like, no, you have to abide by these rules. Obviously, that
Right.
quickly dissipated because obviously I loved him. So that didn't last forever.
Right. Right.
but but I love the fact that I made him work for me. I think that's fun.
Yeah, of course. Whether you were in that Fundamentalist Baptist church or not, make the man work for you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So ultimately, he ended up leaving school because it was just too expensive. These schools are not accredited. So if we had stayed
Oh.
and gotten a degree, it would have been worth nothing. If we had transferred this
Oh,
to another
wow.
college, none of it would have transferred because it's not accredited. So because it's not accredited, you can't get any help with school loans. You have to pay for it yourself. And you can imagine how expensive it is. So
Mm.
he left school, he went back home. I stayed for the year, but unfortunately, I think it was just stress and the food was horrible. I ended up getting pneumonia and I was really sick. So I ended up going home towards the very end of my first year. Now, remember, I lived in Tennessee, he was in Michigan. We ultimately wanted to be together. He wanted to court me, so he wanted to move to Tennessee to be able to do that. His family didn't like me. I was considered more worldly because my skirts were like just below my knee and I wore a little bit of makeup. And I think they could probably tell that I was a little bit more spunky. But
Yeah.
they hated me. So they were like, "No, this isn't going to happen. You're not going down there." So we were both left in this position of we're both being heavily controlled. Neither one of us is getting this permission. So I'm starting to feel that, right? I'm starting to feel that restriction, but I'm also starting to feel that independent spirit come out. So I'm like, I'm done. I'm over this. I'm doing something. So I decide at the age of 19 that I'm going to run away. And I say run away because it really is, even though I'm of
Yeah.
age, I'm
Yeah.
in a
I get it.
restricted situation. So I had to run away. So I planned it. I didn't have a car. I was a girl, so obviously I didn't have access to those things. So I left really early one morning and I took my family's car to the airport, which I didn't have enough money for a plane ticket. So I took a Greyhound bus. I had family that lived in the Michigan area, which is around where Nick was. That was kind of extended family that was outside of the religion, didn't have anything to do with this. So I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I need a place to land. Is it okay if I come stay with you for a little bit?" So I leave at literally the crack of dawn, leave a note on my bed saying the car is going to be here. I get on a Greyhound bus. My family obviously discovers that I'm gone, and then all hell breaks loose, and my phone starts blowing up. They have the police call me, which obviously I'm of age, so there's nothing they can do.
Courage.
But they
Hmm.
have them call me, and then Nick's family starts calling me, and they start lying because they don't know where I'm going. No one knows where I am, so they're trying to figure out where I'm at. So according to them, it was justifiable for them to lie because that's what they were doing. So they lie and they say that Nick has been put into prison, like he's been arrested. They don't tell me why. They're just like, this is what's happening. And you have to remember, I'm a 19-year-old girl who's grown up in a cult. I don't know anything about the real world. I'm
Right.
terrified. I'm scared. I'm alone. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing this by like the seat of my pants because I'm like, I'm over it. So
Yeah.
I get to my aunt and uncle's house. I have all of these phone calls coming, and finally I'm like, fine, I will tell you where I'm at. So I did. And the very next day, my dad and my brother show up at my aunt and uncle's house to get me. And if you know anything about now the story and you're hearing the controlling nature of it, I, one, didn't want to make problems for my aunt and uncle. I think they didn't really know what to do because this
Yeah.
was so outside of the norm. I was like, okay, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So I go back with them. So now I take a car ride from Michigan back to Tennessee. The pastor comes and meets with me, and he's like, if you go to be with Nick, you're going to the devil. This is against God's will. And I'm journaling all of this. So I'm writing this during this is happening. So I'm able to go back and actually read all of this. And in my journal, I'm saying, I've been convicted. I am doing the wrong thing. I need to get right with God. I'm going to live my life better. I can't do it this way. So I'm now back in this brainwash mentality
Yeah.
because I'm being guilted into that.
Yeah.
Now, the fascinating part, and this is where I still to this day don't know where this gumption came from, but I have all that. And then that night, I have this like aha moment of, what am I doing? And I write in my journal and I say that if I don't get out now, I am never going to leave. And I decide in that moment, I don't care what happens, I don't care what I have to do. I'm done. So I go to my mom and I say, look, I want to be with Nick. I have no money. I have nothing to my name. So can I live at home while I save up so that way I can leave the right way? She's like, you have to meet with the pastor. So we meet with the pastor, my mom and I. We sit down at a Panera Bread at a table. I tell the pastor the same thing. He listens to me talk. He then turns away from me and he never looks at me again after this point. He looks at my mom and he says, she's a poison to your family. She has to go.
Oh, wow.
And he had my family kick me out. So my aunt bought me my second Greyhound bus ticket back up to Michigan. And that night, the night before I ultimately, leave because the pastor's now told my family I can't stay, they have people from the church actually, I'm in bed, literally in my pajamas, and people are praying over me. Because now remember, I was like known as the goody goody, always did the right thing. She's the best Christian example. And so everybody was like, what's going on? Like, what
Right.
happened to Kristin? So
She's
they're trying to keep
possessed.
me. Right? So they have people praying over me as I'm in bed the night before I leave. But ultimately, obviously, and so I stuck to my guns. I stayed. I decided this is what I was going to do. And the pastor telling me this, the people, I ultimately had a meeting with the pastor's wife too, which is interesting. I don't remember anything of that conversation. My mind has wiped that clean. So I can imagine it's probably not a good thing, and my brain clearly needed to to protect itself. But if that gives
Right.
you any indication of the level of how they try to coerce me into staying, right? Even though it was the pastor saying she's a poison to your family and she needs to
Yeah.
leave. So I pack a bag, I get put on the bus, and I go back up. And then Nick, he's obviously needing to get out too, right? So ultimately, I like to say that it's my mouth that got both of us out because it did. So here I am staying at my aunt's house. His dad, who is a pastor, calls me. And to this day, again, I don't remember all of the details, but I remember that I used Bible verses to defend myself, which, again, very spunky given that men are the head of the household, men are in control. Like I was programmed to think that, yet I had this spunk in me to be like, no, this is the
Yeah.
way that it is. So it just blew him up. So he got off the phone with me. He calls Nick at work and he's like, your blonde bombshell just told me X, Y, and Z. You guys can have each other. You can get out. So Nick went home, packed his bags, and hightailed it out of there and came to my aunt's house.
Thank goodness for your aunt for allowing you both to stay there.
We're very lucky that I had family that was outside of that, but
Yeah.
that also was accepting enough to be like they really need help and we didn't have anybody else. So what ultimately ended up happening, we got married at the courthouse in Ohio actually because it was like right over the border, from
Mhm.
Michigan. And my family knew about it, his family knew about it, but obviously neither of them came. We were both excommunicated from our churches, which meant that nobody from our churches that we grew up in, none of our families, brothers, sisters, parents, nobody was allowed to talk to us. So we went from being in these bubbles to having these bubbles popped very quickly and just realizing we're in the real world without
Right.
really knowing what to do with it. So we were married, and then ultimately what ended up happening is his family unfortunately are very vindictive people to this day, so they didn't just allow us to just see what happened. They chose to make our lives worse, and they wrote what I like to refer to as the book, and they took any what they considered bad behavior that Nick and I did throughout our entire childhood and life, and they compiled it into a book. And they not only sent it to everybody that was in the churches, but they sent it to all of our family that was outside of the church, including the aunt that I was living with, because their goal was to cut us off from any support
That
that
is,
we could
yeah,
potentially have. Now, ultimately, my aunt knew better, right? But I had extended family like grandparents and aunt uncles. And remember that fear, right? So these cults are all about fear. So I'm still living that. I'm in the mindset of God is punishing me because I've done something wrong. So even though I've done this and I've had this spunk and I've left, I still really believe that God is
yeah,
punishing me. So now we're terrified of what everybody thinks of us. So now we've cut ourselves off. So even the family that lived where we were, we literally cut ourselves off. We isolated ourselves. We were terrified. We tried to dabble in a couple of churches, but we were so scared because people asked questions, right? And we weren't doing anything wrong, but we were programmed to believe we were.
yeah,
So
right,
therefore, we cut ourselves off. And so we
right,
unfortunately had quite a few years of just struggling financially, emotionally, because we didn't have a support system. Our
right.
families cut off any potential support system. So here we are, two 19-year-old kids who grew up in a world that we were just placed in a bubble, and now we're in a bigger world that wasn't made for us.
Yeah. And it's like, how do you know how to navigate that world? I mean, any 19-year-old, I mean, me being not, when I was 19 going out, in the world by myself, I mean, it's hard enough for someone who is, worldly. You weren't programmed to even know what to do or how to handle it, but you're here now, so you're a strong girl.
Yes, and I think about that now. I've had a couple people reflect that back to me, and I'm like, wow, okay, I guess it was really crazy that this 19-year-old girl who was told that I have no voice and I have no power, that I clearly had something inside of myself that was beyond that. And that's what I talk
Yeah.
about a lot, is that we have these things, and especially as women, not that I'm saying anything about men, because men are amazing
No.
too, but as women, we just have this innate power in us. And I genuinely believe that these cults know that, because otherwise they wouldn't do such a great job of making us feel powerless.
Right.
Because once you see that, and this is why they contain you, right? This is why they
Yeah.
keep you in that bubble, because once you step outside of it, now that I know that, I could never go back into that willingly. So it's funny, I actually just watched The Matrix, right? And because
Uh,
someone was like, you need to watch it because obviously it kind of has that dichotomy of you're in a matrix, kind of similar to a cult, and have that
yeah.
awakening moment.
Yeah.
And you're getting given this choice, right? The blue pill or the red pill, right? And I'm like, I would never choose the one, even though in this case, obviously it's a horrible thing that they're going to, right? The reality was horrible. I could never go back because I don't want to live in fallacy. I don't want to live in a world that I'm being told that I'm so much less than everything else. So I would definitely never choose to go back to anything like that, because at this point now I realize my power and that I have a
Yeah.
voice and that I have things to say and that they matter.
Yes, absolutely. And thank goodness that you found that. And I grew up Catholic. I mean, I didn't grow up extremely religious, but I mean, I was always the rebel girl. I would have been excommunicated from your church so long before you even were. I'd be like 5 years old being kicked out the church because I always knew I had a voice and I just sometimes used it too much. I was a rebel. I've always been outspoken and I've always been the one to stand. It's hard for me sometimes to stand up for myself. It really is. But standing up for others, especially
Mm.
the underdog, that's my fight. I mean, I'll do that even on
Yes.
TikTok. Like if I'll go in and I'll see this person really struggling and no one's, I'll try to get their chats going. I'll send them some gifts. I'll do, like, hey, they're trying. And then, I always say I like to go in and bless random people that are struggling. Like I love because always felt like the underdog for so long that now I am the mother of the underdogs.
I
But
love that. I love that. And I love that you've taken that and run with that and putting that love into the world. And I think that's the biggest message whenever I go on a podcast or whenever I talk on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that, I grew up in an environment that was really devoid of love and
Yeah.
kindness and human empathy and what I've chosen to do with my life. So I actually work for a nonprofit here in the Indiana area. I started there not quite 2 years ago. And it's funny, I like to say that the work that I do has done more for me in my healing than all of the years in trauma therapy because I'm taking the things that gave me so much pain and turning that into actually proactively helping people. So we help single moms who want to go back for higher education, and we wrap around them.
Awesome.
We remove the barriers that are holding them back so that way they can fulfill their dreams. But what I get to do, it's really fun. So I do the workshops for the nonprofit, and I do the birthdays, and I do all the fun outings. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really get to know these moms and their families. And we have a couple of them that are really young. They started at the age of 19. And you remember I got kicked out at 19.
Yeah.
So it hits my heart because I remember what it was like to not have anybody. I remember what it's like to not have the resources, to not have somebody to just put their hand out and be like, look, regardless of anything, I'm here. And so for them, they both know, period, I'm here. Regardless
Right.
of anything that happens, regardless of what you need, you have somebody in me that I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to just be a sounding board, to listen to you, to help you, and do whatever I can to help you fulfill those dreams. And so if I can do that for one person, or if I can connect to TikTok to one person that's sitting there that I don't feel seen, I don't feel understood, and I can connect with that one person that now, because of something I've said, they feel seen and heard. I've done everything that I need to do. And ultimately, that was my goal of being on TikTok and having a social media presence. I started it when I was actually going through trauma therapy myself. And I was in the thick of it. What ended up happening is I had my daughter, and before then, I had this huge career in hospitality. I went from the front desk to a director, and I actually never had formal education. And again, being the girl that I grew up in, I have a huge story with that, right? Like I went from not having anything to literally leading teams at a hotel that was on Duke's campus, working with MBA programs. And so to hear that even and to see what I created was crazy. But I went from that when my husband graduated college to being a stay-at-home mom. And what ended up happening is when I went from this high, lots of things going on with my career, I kind of used that as an escape. So when that was
Mhm.
gone, all the trauma just dumped on me, and I wasn't functioning. I couldn't, daily things became too hard for me. I was like, my daughter brought up all of these feelings of things that happened to me as a child with my father because she's a girl, right? So
Yeah.
all of this trauma that I had kind of put into a box just flooded. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Thankfully, I ended up finding an amazing therapist, an amazing psychiatrist that helped get me through that part. So I'm a very big advocate of mental health, finding
Yeah.
the help, being able to connect. Because I will tell you, one of the things that I think people struggle with is finding people that actually will take their insurance, right? Because I struggled with that. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a ton of money,
Yeah.
and so finding that was really hard. And I got really lucky that I found somebody that worked with me, worked with the money that we could do. So I really got lucky. But had I not had those people to be like, we see you, they were trauma informed, they were religious trauma informed, which was really huge for me. But they took someone who I couldn't function. All that trauma dumped, and I didn't know where to go. And so thankfully I worked through all that. So during that time, social media became a way for me to use my voice because I never had that. I never had the ability to have people hear what I had to say. And so I used it as kind of a journal. So anybody listening to
Yeah.
this, if you scroll way back in my TikTok, you'll see I was just raw. I let it out. I said what I was thinking. I just talked through all the feelings. And then you'll see that progression of someone who felt broken, who felt like she didn't have a voice, to where I am today, which is going on podcasts and telling my story and reclaiming figure skating, which I just started skating again a little over 2 months ago. So I have reclaimed that.
Oh,
Yay.
yay. Yay. Yay.
It was such a huge piece for me, and I feel like that was the last biggest thing to reclaim for myself, and the reason why it took so long is because it had so many negative connotations to it. I had given it up myself, even though I was brainwashed into thinking I needed to, I still did, so I almost had guilt around it.
Yeah.
So I needed to take it and be like, I'm just doing this for me. What am I waiting for? So I went and bought skates. And the first time I went on that ice, I can't even begin to tell you the feeling, the coolness of the air, the smoothness of the ice. It was like I went back home again. And I will
Yeah.
never forget it for the rest of my life. So I'm spinning again. I just started jumping again. So it's this story of, you had a girl who just wanted to be seen and loved, but was told that she didn't have a place. I was actually told by my mother that I shone too brightly, so she needed to take me down so others could shine instead of me. So I was
Mm,
told my whole life that I was too much, that, the way I was too much for everybody. So to take that girl and to see now where I'm at, that I'm shining because that is our job as humans. We each have our own way of shining, and it's a beautiful
absolutely.
thing. And I accept who I am, flaws and positives and everything in between. And I just love that girl who's now a woman who finally has a voice and people want to hear what I have to say. And
Right.
so that's why I appreciate spaces like this, because it's so important for survivors and just people going through things in general to feel seen and heard. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's your story of resilience. And our story is so similar when it, not all the cult stuff, but coming down to not knowing who you are anymore. Like, I was HR director for 25 years, and I was the type of HR director. My people loved me. I knew I made a difference. I would even get in trouble by administration for being too personable because HR is supposed to be to protect the business. And it is, and you
Yes.
do, but it's also to be there for your people. Your people are
Yes.
what make your business. I mean, I have nothing if I don't have good employees. And so
Yep.
it's my job to make sure they feel motivated and they feel seen and they feel appreciated and valued. And they gave that back to me. So I always, you knew you made a difference. And then when I
Yes.
had to medically retire, like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I lost myself. I was like, what do I thought at first it's going to be fun. I can just stay home, be a stay-at-home wife, and recover from everything, and just do my thing and have fun. But
Yeah.
I wasn't. There was such a big hole in my heart. Like I didn't feel like I was having purpose in the world. That I wasn't giving things
Yeah.
back. And that's when I became super depressed. That's when my
Yeah.
story of alcoholism started. I had never been an alcoholic ever.
Wow.
And literally, I went on FMLA October 31st, 2024, and had to put myself in rehab for alcoholism on December 1st, 2024.
Wow.
They're like, how can you have progressed? I mean, I was having DTs. I was waking up shaking. That's how much I drank.
Mm.
I drank all day
Wow.
long because I had nothing to do and I was so depressed.
Yep.
And it was, wow. I lost myself really fast. But then
Yep.
I had to snap out of that. Luckily, I have a great community. My husband's amazing. My parents were my friends. My husband, my mother gave me an intervention. I was laying on the
Wow.
couch drunk at 7 a.m. in the morning because I
Mm.
hadn't slept from the night before because I was just up drinking and watching TV. I never did anything. I never went
Yeah.
anywhere. I drank in my house and did by myself. And my husband does not drink at all whatsoever. So I'm
Wow.
trying to hide it from him. And I think I am. Mm-mm. No, he
Yeah.
knew. He didn't know what to do. It's new to
Yeah.
him. I'm not married to an alcoholic. Like, what's going on? So he had to get in touch with my mom, and literally they came and took me straight to rehab, and rehab turned me away and sent me to the hospital and said that I wasn't medically capable of being admitted at that moment.
Wow.
That
Wow.
I when I got to the hospital, it was so bad. They literally put me on a bed at the nurse's station. at the emergency room so that they could
Wow.
watch me because I was going into seizures and I was having the DTs and shakes. And I'm just like shaking. And I'm like, I've never. But now this is where I said, okay, take your life back, girl. You know, you're not going to be able to go back into the workforce right now that you were in. What can you do? And I was like, my
Yeah.
voice, my story, that, and I've always wanted to
Yeah.
have a podcast, and I just never had time. And my husband literally surprised me for my birthday, bought all the equipment. He's like, "You're going to do it," and I was like, "Okay." I'm really doing this thing. And then coincidentally, like it was a God thing. I was in a TikTok live room, the first room I'd ever been in, like a year ago when I started going on TikTok. And she started talking to me and she said, hey, Maren, I've been hoping you were coming into my room. And I was like, okay. She said, I met a guy named Pete, which is the first guy that was on my live on Friday. She
Yes.
said,
Yes.
he's, versus anxiety. She said, I was telling him about you and he wants you to be on his show. And I was like, you were telling him about me? Really? And so she hooked us up. And then when I'm talking to him, preparing to be on the show, I'd never been on a podcast, my first
Yeah.
one. And I was like, if I can be on a podcast, I can host I can do it.
You
I
can.
want this so bad. And literally was on his podcast like on a Monday and had him on mine on like a Thursday, like days
Ah.
after. I was like, okay, let me get everything going. Let me set up my stuff. And it just flew from there. And I'm loving it. And it's just like, now I know I'm giving something back. I'm giving people, that's why I want it to be the storytelling. Y'all come on, tell your story. I'm just giving you the safe space to do it. And met some amazing people who have been through, some very difficult things and have all been resilient. You get to hear that resilience, that good story at the end. And sometimes people falter back and it's going to happen, but they've now
Yes.
built community and we're going to make sure they pick themselves back up. We're going to be there. We're all going to be there together for each other. So I totally get that side of it. And I'm so glad that we are moving forward, finding our
Yes.
voice and using it and enjoying, giving back and knowing that you are. Because some people give so much, but they just don't know. They don't see it. But when you know you are and you can be proud of yourself, that's the confidence is the sexiest thing a woman can have.
It is. I agree. And I love hearing your story because I feel like you're right. We both hit that moment because I was that
Mhm.
woman on the couch. I wasn't drinking, but I was doing nothing. And if anybody knows me enough, you can probably even tell from my personality. I'm very much
Yeah.
like I'm vivacious. I love life.
Social.
And so
Yeah.
when I'm not, I literally spent those few years, I barely got off the couch. And I have two kids. I took care of them. I was a functioning depression, right? Like I took care of my kids. I
Right.
did the things that I needed to do, but I was void of any joy. I couldn't go and do anything. I didn't want to see anybody. I just hit. And what ended up happening for me, it was a combination of all of that trauma, but then I was going through things with my mom, who's very much a narcissist, and I lost that. I ultimately had to disconnect from her, but that's what happened is I everything that I thought I knew about my family, it was already bad, but I just kind of started unraveling what my life was with my mother, and when that left, it just I lost everything. So I resonate with your story that it's like when you hit those rock bottom moments where you just don't even know who you are anymore. You don't know
Hmm.
who you're looking at. And then so you fill it. You fill it with things. And, in my case, I was filling it with things that were not good to eat and I became really unhealthy. We fill it with something because we don't know
Yeah.
what else to do. And it takes those people and it takes those resources to reach down and be like, you're not alone. You are so much more than this, and to see that in
Hmm.
you. And so that's what you're doing for other people. That's what I'm doing for other people.
Right.
And I just think it's so beautiful that we can
Yes.
connect and we can both see each other, that we might have different stories, but we all
Right.
are connected. We all have these moments, but we all have the capability of so much more, that anything
Yes.
is possible, that you just need to believe and have that one little spark to be like, I can do this. Like, go on that
Yes.
podcast, talk on that TikTok, join that live, go to that mic night where you're scared of doing it. Go talk to that stranger that maybe you've seen.
Hmm.
You're like, oh, well, maybe they're depressed, but I don't really want to talk to a stranger. Go talk to them, have that conversation because you just
Yeah,
never know what connection and what change you're going to make in someone's life.
absolutely. And absolutely. And it's always so fulfilling, full circle when it comes back and they come back to you and they're like, I met you at such a low point. And
Yes.
this is what you did personally, to help me find myself again. And it's like,
Yes.
I was just being empathetic and I was just having a heart and I saw something in you. But to know that you really can make a difference. So you gotta suck it up yourself. I have to leave my shyness or my self-esteem issues to the side and just be that part of myself that is confident, that does
Yes.
love people, and that I'm so empathetic. And I just really want people to shine. I want to see people succeed. And that helps me. That's my therapy. Like people
Yes.
always saying, talking, like on the podcast, I know that's so therapeutic for me. It's therapeutic for me too. Like just
Yes.
hearing the stories and just I feel your feelings and your emotions. And then I'm so proud at the end, like your resilience, your story of resilience. And just, I love, love, love to see that and be a part of that and continue on. Like I talk to every single person that's ever been on my shows. I text with them still all the time, and
I
some
love
people
that.
I'm already scheduling for part twos. Like you'd probably be one of them because you have so much of a story it's so
There's
long. You can't really give it all in an hour or so.
yes.
So I have a
Yes.
couple. I'm like, okay, we're coming back for part two in season two or season three. Well, there's more I want to hear from this
Yes.
person.
I
Especially,
would
yeah.
love that.
Yes, because I know you have so much more to say. So it's so interesting. And what was so funny, the very within 2 or 3 days of meeting with you, and then you agreeing to come onto the podcast, I also had met Layla, who was in the live too. She wasn't on the camera, but
Yes.
she was there, and she's an ex from the FLDS church. She was actually one of
Yeah.
Warren. She was Warren Jeff's 23rd wife. And I'm like,
Wow.
that is crazy, but it's fascinating. And then I have watched all those documentaries. I've seen all this. I kind of got into it for some
Yeah.
reason. Like I'm gonna never be a part of the FLDS, but it was interesting to watch. And
It
then knowing that, oh
is.
my goodness, I just met someone who was totally in that world. I was like, I have to have her on the show. And I was so scared to talk to her
Yes.
about it, but she brought it up to me. And I was like,
That's
oh,
amazing.
thank you, because I've been dying to ask you, but I didn't want it to seem pushy or make it look like I was only talking to you to ask you to be on my show. I wasn't. She asked me, she was like, yay. So I can't wait to do
I
that one too. It's so interesting.
It
It's
is. Well,
sad,
it's fascinating.
but
It is. But
yeah.
so the FLDS, that's Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. So again, that
Hmm.
fundamentalism, it's that extreme
Yes.
version, but they're all connected. At the end of the day, what it is power and control.
Yep.
And unfortunately, and I hate to say this again, love our guys, but it's men, and it's men
Yeah.
who are looking to control and be powering over women because ultimately most of the victims are girls and women and
Yeah.
children within these societies.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to remind ourselves there are the good men out there too.
Yeah. Oh,
My
I'm
husband,
married to one,
and
so yes.
yeah, you're married to one. I'm married to one. He is my rock. How that he was there for me through 30 days in rehab. And then
Yes.
I relapsed a couple of months later when his dad died, because we were very close. And I wasn't
Wow.
working at the times, and his dad had got diagnosed with lung cancer. So I was taking him to chemo, and I was taking him to all the doctor's appointments, and I was spending time with him, and we were just together all the time, more than we had been in the past 6 years. And I kept saying, I can't relapse. He was so proud of me for getting sober. I can't.
Mm.
But it happened, but you kick yourself in the butt and you can say, okay,
Yeah.
no, Maren. Okay, so you had one little bad day or two bad days or a week of bad days, but you get back on your track. That's not what you want to do. Get back to what you know is good for yourself and your family. And he's been there through all of it. And also another part of my problem is I have a borderline personality, which means that I
Mm,
always am always paranoid of abandonment. My abandonment issues are deep and heavy. And
wow.
because he's so wonderful, like extremely wonderful, every day, and I have to knock it out of my head, but every day, at least once, it comes into my head, why me? Like, why does he love me? Like this, my house is a wreck right now, and I was having a bad emotional day, and he's just like, he's here and he loves me and he picks me up. And I'm just like, so scared all the time. He's going to eventually leave. He's going to eventually realize that I'm just too much. And
Mm,
that I have, we communicate so well about it though. Because I even told him when we first got together, I want you to read this book. And it was a book that says, I hate, I hate you. Please don't leave me. And it's
mm,
that you just crave love so much that you even crave the love from people don't deserve it, or that you don't even want to be loved by, but you want to have that love that you
right.
don't care where it comes from. Or
Right.
you're just constantly feeling like they're going to leave you, and who could,
Mm,
I don't know. So that's something I fight every single day. So that's another reason why I did
yes.
podcasts is so that I talk through my stuff. I talk through my own
Yes.
stuff too, and it's really good,
It,
to talk and to get it out and be open and break the stigma that this is
yes.
okay.
It
No
is.
one is going to know. No one would have known I had borderline personality disorder if I hadn't told them. I don't
Right. And at
have
the
any type of outward um, behaviors or anything like that, like some people do. I don't have any of that. So you wouldn't know, but it's
right.
there
Well,
every
it's
day.
important. Right. And it's important, though, to bring awareness to that because it's nothing to be
Yeah.
ashamed of. It's simply your brain functions a little bit differently than other people
Yeah.
who doesn't have that. And then at the end of the
Right.
day, what I was thinking about when you were talking about that, it's your feeling of being worthy, feeling worthy of love. And I think as soon
Mhm.
as you can look in the mirror and say, I am worthy, and believe that because I am the exact same way and I struggle with that hard. So I have to tell myself every day, I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of someone who cares about me and who loves me. And if we can say that to ourselves every day, then we can change that script in our brain that's telling us we're not good enough because we truly, truly are. Because look, we have people in our
Yeah.
lives that love us. We are so
Yeah.
worthy. We just have to continue to change that script. So I see you and I
Yeah.
think you're amazing and I think you're powerful. So let that be a reflection to
Yeah.
you that you are doing all of the things and it's being noticed.
Thank you. You too, ma'am. That's why we clicked so well so fast. I
Yes.
remember. I think you like popped up on my FYP. I can't even remember.
I
It was just like
love
something
that.
so random. I think you popped up and I was like, I liked your purple hair. That's what made me listen to your video first. And then I was
Yay.
already kind of interested in that kind of stuff. So I watched like so many of your videos that day. Finally, I was like,
Aw.
I'm going to talk to her. I'm just going to reach out to her. Screw
Yes.
it.
Well, look at
She can
that.
either say no or
You were
she could say
brave.
yes. Yeah. I
Yes.
knew what I wanted and I went for it. And I have done
Love
that.
that.
So obviously that shows my confidence. So I have to remind myself that too. And I didn't think
Yes.
about it till as I'm talking now. Obviously
Yes,
that's
see?
confidence. Yeah.
Exactly. You are a force, and that needs to be recognized.
Yes, ma'am. We're girl power over here, girl power.
Yes, I love it. But thank you so much for having me on today. This has been
Yes.
phenomenal. So thank you
Yes,
so
I've
much.
enjoyed it so much. And like I said, season one's triple episode will be aired next week. And then after
Yay.
that, season two drops, and you'll be the first episode dropping for season two. So as soon as it
Yay.
drops, I'll send you all the information so that you can share it out too. And I'm so excited to get it out there.
Yes, me
So,
too. And
yes,
I am
ma'am.
so honored that you're making me a season opener. I can't even tell you how much my heart is like, ah.
I thought about it. My stuff is very thought out on who my opener was going to be and who my season finale was going to be for season one. I wanted to start with your story. It was very
Thank
interesting, and I
you.
liked you. You just
I'm
you can tell
honored.
how
Oh,
powerful you are, and the
I'm
purple hair
honored. So
makes it
thank
better
you.
too. So,
Yes, it does.
purple hair.
I
Well,
love it.
you.
I went purple a few years ago and now this is
Uh-huh.
how I'm known. Like my kids that I work with in the nonprofit, they literally know me
Uh-huh.
as the woman with the purple hair.
Oh yeah, I've had purple. I've had hot pink. Even, that was when I worked for an independent nursing
Mm,
facility. I didn't have a
nice.
corporate office to
Nice.
tell me what to do,
Yes.
and I
I
did
love
what I wanted
that.
to do.
I
Then
love
I got
that.
into
That
corporate America, and I never got to go pink or purple again. But
yep.
now I work for
Yep.
myself, so I'm going to do something crazy soon. I
You can do
was
what you
bleach
want.
blonde. I did this the black I just did here recently. I was blonde.
Ah, I love that. That's amazing.
I'm gonna show your personality through your hair person or
Yes,
and
me
makeup.
too. Yes, me too. See, this is why we vibe.
Oh, we vibe. Yes, ma'am. Well, we have had such a great time, and I cannot wait to have you back. We'll get together, get something scheduled, and we just want to end with saying, you are enough. You're not alone. And if you ever come to a moment where you feel like you don't have anyone to reach out to, you don't have family that's supportive, reach out to us. Reach out to
Yes.
98. Reach out to someone. Just find that one person that you do feel comfortable enough to reach out to. We've got to break the stigma about sharing our emotions, break the stigma on mental health. And we can only do this by speaking our voices, sharing our stories, and having you guys listen and support. So thank y'all so much for listening. And we will see you on the next one. Thank you.
Bye.